I partly programmed that in because it's oldie school Unitarian, back when the Unitarians had loads and loads of Christians, uh, which I will talk about now. Just gotta make sure I'm in. A few years ago at the UVic Center for Studies of Religion and Society, I led a discussion on this. If 70% of Victorians have no religion, they're the religious nuns, then it is reasonable to, people who have known real nuns, then it is reasonable to assume that those people, and most people under the age of 40, have little idea of the significance of Easter, Easter time, or even Jesus. Who will teach them? Should they even be taught? Today's talk about Jesus, Easter, and the Unitarians, I'm going to ask similar questions. What lessons do we continue to take from Jesus, if any, in his life, death, and after death? How did his call for reinvigorated Judaism get turned into a different religion, Christianity? Is Unitarianism today a home for Christians? Specifically, Christians who are leaving the old mainstream denominations. I want to suggest that the theology doesn't matter. We know nothing historically solid about the birth of Jesus, except that his family, or at least his father, was from Nazareth. Everything else, the manger, 3 wise men from Iran, the virgin birth, and even the date, was written decades after the birth and death of Jesus, to show that his life fit within the Hebrew Bible. The writers whose books are called Matthew and Luke composed different stories of the birth of the Messiah, and there is no way to square the 2 stories. The last gospel, called John, is silent on the birth of Jesus. The Christmas story is a fairy tale that was written to make the adult social justice fighter Jesus more magical. I want to tell you a brief anecdote before I get into the meat of my talk. Many years ago, I was reading about the Bible, and I happened upon Thomas Paine's The Age of Reason, a book that he wrote in 1794. In The Age of Reason, Paine examined each chapter and verse of the Bible, and with no additional sources of information or analysis, dismissed much of the Bible as fables made to scare children. I read this in wonder and amazement, and I wanted to discuss it with someone who was similarly awestruck. And that's when I found the Unitarians in Belleville, Ontario. And I've been a full-time Unitarian and amazed student of religion ever since. If you critically read a New Testament, or take a look at the lectures online, there's audiobooks now online, you could just listen. You can learn a lot, including the distinction between the historical Jesus and the theological Jesus. Whereas historians can read the Gospels and tell you that certain things about Jesus are not historically accurate, believers read the Gospels and somehow have faith that God was in Jesus, that Jesus was in God, and etc., etc. On these faith topics, historians like me have no opinion. Faith questions and historical questions are radically different and give different answers. Historians of religion, many historians of religion, tend to agree that a man named Jesus of Nazareth existed in time and in place. It was a time when Rome ruled the province of Palestine, and the Romans let the Jews run their own religious affairs. 3 of the Gospels agree on how John the Baptist washed Jesus in the Jordan River, and the 4th Gospel connects Jesus and John. So let's agree, just for now, that someone named Jesus was baptized by someone named John. Then Jesus performed some deeds that were reported as miracles, a miracle being an event that appears inexplicable by the laws of nature, and so is held to be supernatural in origin. Plus, this Jesus was preaching on aspects of Jewish law that appealed to the common folk of the day. He didn't demand that people only worship in the temple and pay the temple tax. He did not grant all religious authority to the priests and the tall hats. Jesus says that everybody can have a direct relationship with God, even if people are poor, or if they work in professions that are looked down upon. Jesus insisted that it is better to be good to your neighbors than to observe every jot and tittle of Jewish law. And that leads me to, what is Jesus for Unitarians? Is Jesus even relevant today? I had to figure out if it was, some of you on Facebook would have seen, is it today about Easter or about 420? And Kathy pointed out that 420, the annual day of marijuana remembrance, puts a different spin on Easter. The Unitarian Universalist principles and sources say that UUs draw wisdom from Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. You don't have to believe that source, and many UUs have no belief in or no opinion on God or Jesus or Jewish teachings or Christian teachings. But many lefty progressive UUs like the idea of Jesus as anti-authoritarian, rabble-rousing socialist. Imagine a young Bernie Sanders. And many of us try to be kind to our neighbors. Some Unitarians go all the way for Jesus. There's a Unitarian Universalist Christian Fellowship with 60 chapters and a group that meets in the UU Church of Halifax, Nova Scotia. One congregation in this faction, the Venerable King's Chapel in Boston, states in its covenant, and I checked again last night, in the love of truth and in the spirit of Jesus Christ, this is a Unitarian church, we unite for the worship of God and the service of all. Whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here, believer or doubter, seeker or skeptic. We are all on this journey together. I don't think we're going to put this on our sign out front, but some might want to. So who is Jesus for the Unitarians? For me, the central Christian idea that one human could substitute all of our sins in exchange for his life by dying on the cross is beyond baffling. Easter makes no sense to me. I'm frankly surprised that some of my Christian friends believe somehow that Jesus died for us. And nothing could make me believe that anyone who was definitely executed by the state could rise again in any physical form. If that's what makes Jesus special, then I can't get behind it. If his lessons about caring for our neighbors makes him special, then okay, I can support that. A lot of evil has been done in the name of religion during the past 2,000 years and before. We know that Christian churches and church leaders bear responsibility for great good and for great evil. In our look today at Easter and Jesus, I don't want us to forget the evils, but I do want to focus on who Jesus is for Unitarians. Let us Unitarians leave aside the miracle of the Christmas birth story as a non-historical fairy tale, but continue to celebrate the midwinter return of the light and the wonder of any child's healthy birth. Let us Unitarians leave aside the miracle of Jesus' rebirth 3 days after he was killed by the Romans, but continue to celebrate the strength of religious belief that propels followers to live lives of dedicated service and to take care of one another. As Unitarians, let us celebrate that a social justice advocate rose up from the peasant class to teach radical messages of love and tolerance, and to fight the oppressive systems of power that he faced in his day. We still celebrate such people in Canada and around the world. I was thinking about Jack Layton last night, but there are so many. Jesus was at the heart of Unitarianism and Universalism for hundreds of years. As a Jewish reformer, a social justice worker, a fighter of oppression and against power structures, and even as the Son of God. Today, we Unitarians may regard Jesus as Son of God, just as might all sons and daughters be of God. Unitarians see Jesus' care for the poor and oppressed as his commitment to the inherent worth and dignity of all persons. In his struggle against the Romans and the high priests, we see what it takes to struggle against oil companies and sometimes against our own government. I want us to take a second look at Jesus as a prophet to the Unitarians. If we can take his example of radical acceptance, and if we can strive to do justice and care for the poor, then our congregation regains its mission in the world. By accepting that the human Jesus, as divine as any of us, lived, preached, was baptized by his brother-in-law John, attended meetings, lost his temper probably at meetings, made his friends laugh, got married in a wine-soaked party at Canaan, ate and drank, and was executed for the crime of sedition, then we can make Capital Unitarian Universalist Congregation more of a home for Christians, Jews, Muslims, and the religious nuns. I know that people come to Capital Unitarian for community, not for theology and not for mythology. When folks come through our doors, they seek acceptance. They do not want to be judged on the basis of their beliefs, but they might judge us on our theology. For the people whose United Church or Anglican Church has shut its doors and who decide to try Unitarianism, I would not want us to judge the newcomer for their ancient belief in miracles. I want them to see us as we are, curious, accepting, occasionally flawed, but also loving and caring. In this place of equality and principles, on Easter Sunday, as much as any other day, I want this to be a house of peace. And with that, let us sing 1054, "Let this be a house of peace."